Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you. I welcome you to the 7th lecture of report writing skills, which is in continuation with the content that we have discussed in the previous lecture. We started our discussion with an introduction to writing, and then we made our discussion more specific and particular towards technical writing. We looked into the definitions, we analyzed those definitions and tried to extract the basic meaning which comes out of that definitions which were provided in the previous slides. We came up with some motives. We realized there are some objectives, there are some factors which are required to be considered, talking about the defined purpose and the defined audience, on the basis of which you structure your technical writing by providing specific factual information. In our today's lecture, we're going to start the discussion with the purpose of technical writing. If you look at the first purpose, it is basically related to the provision of information. We talk about technical writing, we talk about the element of technical content within a draft. So of course it has to be based on some information which is being provided to the target audience. This is the first purpose, that it's providing the audience with some factual information. Based on facts and figures, you move ahead within your writing process. And based on that factual information, you have some examples, as you can see over here in front of you, that it is related to reports, and we can say instructions and the descriptions. And within the description there are different components which can be described. By a description we mean the explanation and the elaboration of a concept which was assigned to you to look upon and to analyze. So you basically provide it in the form of a description. In a similar way, if you want someone to know how to use an appliance or an instrument, so you provide them a set of instructions. That is the basic instruction to be kept in mind before using this specific object, because this content is basically directly related to that object. So these are included within the very first purpose of technical writing, which is the provision of information. The next important purpose, I would say for sure, is persuasion. It is not just about the transfer of information or some new knowledge, but that new knowledge, when you say, is based on facts and figures. You're trying to provide some evidence. So the provision and going through that big process of collecting evidence, collecting data, then analyzing it, then describing details to your audience, is to persuade them. Look back into your previous lectures, developing and going back, reconceptualizing everything that you have understood and learn from the lectures based on report writing. So what was it all about? You start with identification, then you examine, then you, based on your findings, try to sum up your conclusion, but those conclusions are followed by some recommendations, and through those recommendations you want to change the perspectives of your audience so that they may take a new decision. So the same point comes under the bigger domain of technical writing, that you want to persuade your audience. That is and other primary goal and purpose when you say that you are dealing with technical writing. So what would be the purpose? Not just the information, but also the persuasion. And how do you do it? Convincing the audience to draw the desired conclusion from the provided information, directly linking your information with persuasion. So you can say that based on this information, you try to draw a conclusion. And for that purpose, you basically start with persuasion. So it's not just information, but that information is basically related to persuasion, so that you can achieve the ultimate conclusion, and that conclusion would initiate an action. And that is why we have proposals and recommendation, just the way we have the last section. In the last few sections you have one section which is of recommendation within a report writing. So this recommendation, or we talk about a proposal, is all about when you have some perspectives, you have some ideas, you have some recommendation and suggestions which is going to bring a better difference, and that you want to be considered by your target audience. And that is also another primary objective when we talk about the purpose of technical writing. As the question itself indicates, if you look into the top of the slide, is what do technical writers basically create? Based on the studies that we have done so far and developing the understanding of technical writing, so what is the final output? What do we get out of going through that process, following all the instructions, keeping in view all the principles that we have learned? What do we get as the output of this technical writing process? So we have a set of examples for you so that you will understand, and we'll be learning a lot from it. You can look into the samples as well, you can Google them as well, but a general idea would clarify your mind, starting from the instructions. Instructions are always written using technical writing. You cannot use any other format. Let's say talk about the paragraph writing or the essay writing, in which you try to be more argumentative. No, that is not the case. Consider it as a strict and totally prohibited mode of writing when we talk about the instructions. It is not something to be expected from you to provide instructions in an argumentative form or in an essay form. No one has the time to look into the details and going into introduction and body and conclusion. No, your point should be very clear. You should be to the point when we talk about the instructions, and that is why it has to be written in a technical form. Facts and figures, factual information, define audience, define purpose. The next one is related to directions for operating a machine or performing a task, talking or a description of a process. So one way or another, again think of the example as we discussed earlier, think of that definition, a link between knowledge and the machine, or the machine and its knowledge of application, how to use it. So again, the manner in which you link it is through technical writing. So that is one of the basic purpose which should be remembered when we talk about the purpose of technical writing. So far we are clear about instruction and we have talked about the direction. Then we can never ignore the business setting or the business scenario within which technical writing has a significant role to perform and play. When we talk about the business setting, there are two sorts of communication which are happening at regular interval. We can say that we have internal communication within an organization, And we can also refer to the external communication which is happening between organizations or the higher authorities of different organizations. So if we talk about the policies, the procedures which are to be shared between different organizations, so that will be done in the form of, as you can see, memos and business letters. We'll come to this short form of informal business letter, and we'll look into its structure and its detail in the upcoming lectures. But the point to mention here is that this is also another purpose or a role performed by technical writing. So it's not learned on its own without any utility or purpose. The learning of technical writing has a big role to perform in nearby future when you'll become part of a profession or when you'll start your own professional life. And it will be used in the following forms as we are discussing right now. Then moving onwards, now it will become more easy for you after getting a good idea of what basically is a report, how it is prepared, what is the basic structure. You will know how to use the basic structure of a report using technical writing. So that is also another purpose when you have to prepare a technical report. So you need to keep in mind how to do it, and that is basically using technical writing. Technical writing could be of different forms, and specifically talking about the technical reports, so it could be, you call it the periodic reports as it's written over here, discussed within the types of report. We have the monthly report, or the one we get after a year or based on some activity. So these are basically known as the periodic reports, because these are the reports which are expected after a specific interval of time. Once that time is complete, it is expected that a new edition or a new version of that periodic report will be received to the concerned addressee. Once again, one of the purpose of technical writing. Then of course we have the proposals which are part of the recommendations as discussed within the previous slide related to purpose. We have summary of staff or team meetings. That is also another part of technical writing, because the summary itself is provided in the form of meeting. It's also known as the minutes of meeting. Basically it is related to a scheduled meeting between all the employees of an organization. They have a set agenda. That agenda is discussed by taking the opinion of all the persons, all the concerned persons who are involved in a major part of that meeting. There is one individual who is keeping a record of all the opinions and counter opinions which are coming from the other side. And with this argumentation and counter argumentation, finally we come up with the conclusion. The sayings and the opinions of each individual is jotted down, a written record is kept, and finally when it's given a structure, it is structured using technical writing. There is a specific and a particular format in which it has to be drafted, it has to be prepared, and this is the basic reference which is being provided here. That is also another usage of technical writing. So this is what technical writing creates. Then of course if you come at the end, the last points are also important. This point redundant one, but the second one is important, related to your brochures, your commercials, your advertisements and job description. So it's not something which is just written like one sentence after the other and just keeping the element of coherence. No, there is a specific format and the points are coming one after the other, keeping in view that specific format which is being followed in the light of the nature of that technical writing or the objective which it's supposed to achieve. So these are the things which can be a very vivid and lucid reflection of what technical writing or its knowledge can create. These are some of the major forms which you have just seen. We can see much more by going into the detail, but now as we move ahead, there is another point that I want you to look into while using your technical writing knowledge. The recognition of your audience is as important as it is while we discussed it in case of report writing process. It will define how you're going to structure your document. As we noticed when we talked about the types of report, the motives were changing the overall structure of a report. Talking about the persuasive report, so the focus remained towards the provision of facts and figures on the basis of which you can persuade your audience to initiate an action. If the target was just to give you a description of the activity which happened and which was the basic motive to provide feedback related to an activity, then it turns itself into an activity report. And if it has to come after regular intervals, certainly it would become a periodic report. So motives are determining the basic structure of a report. And within those motives, another important factor which plays a pivotal role is the nature of the audience, and in case of technical writing, giving you a more generic knowledge. These are some of the roles which would become part of your practical life, and these are the points which are to be considered while preparing and drafting your report. For example, you can have a supervisor, like a task has been assigned to you and now it is being supervised, and basically you will be answerable to him or her to provide your feedback using technical writing. So keeping in view the nature of the audience, let's say in this case number 1, it is supervisor, so your content should be based on the instruction of your supervisor. He or she will determine the structure of the technical writing and the way it should be prepared for that person to receive it. In another case, if we talk about case number 2, see, nature of your technical writing would be different when you'll be communicating to your colleague, because right now you are talking to an individual of the same level, whereas in this case you are moving towards higher authority. So as we all know, there is a way of talking to a friend and there is a way of talking to a teacher. You gossip and you talk to your class fellows in a different way, but it is never expected from you to talk in the same way, no matter how frank you are, to a teacher. You have a line and you have to maintain it when you have that atmosphere and that environment. So the context itself is determining the manner in which your writing will be structured. These are the points to be considered. Then of course your language would certainly become different when we talk about dealing with your subordinate. For example, if you have to use technical writing but you have to provide a set of instruction to your subordinates, so certainly this position is taking you towards the authority, and your language would automatically become more authoritative compared to the mode of technical writing which was being used in case of a supervisor or a colleague. Then of course talking about vendors, people who of course provide you with the goods based on a deal. So the manner in which that dealing would be done, that technical writing would also have its own specific rules and regulation as prescribed by your workstation and your working environment, and these are to be followed as well. A similar situation moves you to structure your technical writing in a specific way when we talk about the customers as well. So the situation would determine the kind of technical writing which is allowed and which can be done to meet the objectives. Now these are some of the examples to make you understand the kind of impact that the environment and the kind of audience has over your overall structure of that technical writing that you are doing. For example, we can say that in case of an instructional manual for repairing a machinery would be very different. For example, you will have stepwise points of how you can repair a machinery. You have to follow those principles, because if you try to drag yourself away from those specific steps which are required to be followed, certainly you won't be able to repair the machinery. That is one example of technical writing, and it has its own defined purpose and a defined audience which has to repair a machinery. Then of course we can also talk about a memo listing meeting agendas. So we of course have minutes of meeting. In a similar way, a memo providing detail of all the meeting agendas would be structured in a different way compared to the document that we discussed earlier, which exists here in this slide as bullet number 1. So the objectives are changing the structure as well. Of course, in case of your memo, this memo will be providing detail of the meeting agendas in a different way. The following points were discussed within this meeting, and afterwards, based on those points in the discussion, which concluded with the following number of points, these were the points which turned into the agenda of next meeting, and that is how you proceeded on. So these are being covered in a different way compared to the points we have discussed earlier in case of bullet number 1. Then if we talk about bullet number 3, a manual is different of course from a memorandum, and if we talk about a letter to a client written by a vendor who has to supply the goods would also be very much different, because on one hand the objectives are different, number 2 the overall scenario has been changed, the purpose itself is also different, which we will see in the upcoming settings that we will be discussing one by one. But now you can see that different scenarios have different formats. Over here we have a manual being used for repairing a machinery. If we have to talk about and highlight the agenda points of a meeting, so you will be using a memo. In case of the goods and their supply, the interaction has to take place between the clients and the vendors. So certainly the form of technical writing which shall be used will be the letter. And of course, if we have to provide some recommendations, so those recommendations will be in the form of a report proposing a new computer system, which is the ultimate objective. But in case of some recommendations, so we have a specific type of report which is the recommendation report. But look at the manner in which we have so different forms of technical writing. So these are the factors, as we discussed earlier, which are determining which mode of technical writing to be used to meet what objectives, and that is how you divide technical writing into different forms. And these are some of the examples, as you can see over here. Very good examples, and some of which have been discussed with you as well. Most of you have a good idea because you deal with these examples in your day-to-day environment as well. We are quite good. We all have become quite good, but going back into 90s and the early 2000s. So, but I guess we should stick to 90s, because within 2000 the next generation was quite good at using these things. But in the earlier phases, email was considered itself as a new mode of information, very quick, very easy to use. So this was like a new revolution, turning this globe into a global village. So a big mode, and once again you can see that it has a specific mode. It expects some knowledge from you as well to be able to apply this mode of communication. Of course, you realize that you have a specific bar in which you have to provide the details in the form of an email address of your receiver. Then of course yours is automatically provided. You have to provide a subject as well, and then you are given a block in which it is expected from you to provide some information. This is also another point to consider, that no need to go into the detail. Don't provide so much description that it becomes irrelevant, because email has to be short. It is a general convention that in case you have detailed information, just the way in case of a report we have the appendices, the appendix, over here you have this option of an attachment. So just the way you send an application and then you say pertinent documents are attached, in a similar way, in case you have detailed information, then you can always look towards the option of attaching your documents. But try to provide focused information, and by focused, compact, very concise, and the relevant information, which is basically the subject matter or the target of your email, what you really want to convey to your addressee. So just imagine and just notice how many things, how many relevant things are to be there within your mind while just using this mode of technical writing, which is email. Then of course looking towards memos, memorandum, another form of communication which is used within an organization, considered as informal. Why informal? Because when we say it is informal, we mean that it's not actually trying to be frank with someone, but trying to be more compact, to the point, trying to be more relevant, and initiating an action at the very earliest or as soon as possible. So this is also another mode, having its own format, which has its own expectations, and that format, if being followed, is going to provide some good results as well. Then of course, if you look back to the previous slide, you will have an idea, as I use this, refer to this mode of technical writing, letter writing, used between the clients and the vendors for the communication process, for the supply of goods or some other purpose which has to be highlighted. So in case of these participants of communication, this mode of technical writing is considered essential and important to meet the objectives. Then of course, talking about report, well, this is like a topic on which you can give me a lecture now, because I am pretty sure that now we have discussed in such a good detail that now you're in a position to explain it on your own. You have an in-depth knowledge. We discussed it like from every angle. We tried to focus on each and every detail so that nothing may be missed out, and even still, if there is something which you consider is something which should be shared, it can be looked upon within the internet as well, to have a good idea, to make your skills even better, to sharpen them, to ameliorate your own report writing skills. But hopefully we have a good idea, and that is one example of the technical writing scenarios. The proposal itself is also can be related, because overall when you do this analytical report based on the analysis, based on a task, you find some results, and based on those results you come up with some conclusion and recommendations. And those recommendations are not just the end of the story, rather they become and turn into a proposal that you present before your employer to initiate an action. So action is basically initiated and instigated based on your own proposal, that what do you propose is the solution of this problem. So this itself becomes the proposal and the basic point that you want to highlight and that you want to present as your own effort to bring a difference. So this is the importance of a proposal. Then talking about the user manual, we have discussed it in detail, that providing a set of instructions, whether it is related to the using of a machinery or to repair it, but this is the significance in case of a technical writing of this sort, a user manual. Then of course we have the website, requires no explanation, you have a good idea, you have good knowledge, even more than me, regarding the languages such as HTML. Now we have so many websites itself which are used to prepare your own web pages. I know about one, wix.com. You can just give it a try and you can prepare your own web page. There are some other tools as well which you can use. There are some other sites through which you can learn these languages to prepare your own websites. So website is also another form of technical writing, and for this sort of technical writing, on one hand of course you need that language to prepare your own website and to upload it, and secondly there is a manner in which it is expected that your interface basically should present the content itself on the screen of an individual who opens up your website or who tries to log in through their addresses. So that presentation has to be kept in mind as well. There has to be a template. There are some fundamental factors or the characteristics of a website, and that a website should have the following key information, some description, some division into different sections, along with some visuals, along with some ads, some key links. So you can see the manner in which the information is being provided. Again, that is also technical, and this technical information, the technical mode of communication, varies in case of a website from all the other modes that we have discussed so far. Then we have brochures, which are used, a mode of guidance, a mode of advertisement, but you have these brochures as well which are providing a description, a detail, let's say of some product, let's say of some new project, but these brochures are always there providing a description within a specific format, and this formatting is basically turning it into a specific form of technical writing itself. And then of course we have the newsletter, although will be discussed, a very good form of technical writing, because we divide it into good news and bad newsletter, and then they have their own set of objectives and their own goals which will be discussed, but is also another good example of technical writing, and it varies from situation to situation as we have just witnessed. Now, just to add a bit more interesting color into our lecture, we're going to give you some interesting scenarios, and you'll realize how this scenario is being met and how it is trying to be dealt with using the different forms of technical writing. As you can see over here, if we just give it a reading, it's a scenario being created in which email is considered to be the best mode of technical writing. So as I discussed earlier, the scenario determines the mode which becomes ideal for the transfer of information, which is after all one objective and purpose of technical writing. So as a computer information system employee, you're an employee, you work at 1-800 hotline help desk, and a call comes from a concerned customer. A customer has called you, raising up a query. To answer that client's question and follow up, a one-page email documenting the problem and your response can be provided. So you can see the manner in which the setting has been provided. This is your setting working over here. This is your hotline where you receive different calls. Now a question or a query has been raised. Let's suppose there is a situation in which you cannot provide immediate feedback. Then of course you have this other option of follow-up. And how do you follow up? You basically prepare an email, you document an email to resolve that problem and then to provide the solution as well. So this is basically one scenario in which email is being considered and is considered as the ideal mode of technical writing because it provides you space. In case of a telephonic conversation, you basically have to provide the response in real time. But let's say you're short of data, and because of that shortage, you are unable to provide the kind of solution that you intended to apply. In that case, of course, you have time. And afterwards, for that follow-up, after collecting relevant evidence, you can move onwards and then provide the proper solution by providing and answering to that query using that email. So in such a scenario, email becomes an ideal forum, and that is why it is always recommended within your workstation to on one hand have an email ID, and number two, it's a good thing that you come in the morning after this hello, how are you doing, salutations, you open up your system, and the very first thing is open up your emails, see if there is some query, if there is anything which has to be answered, do it at the very first place, and then start your tasks which are to be done within as per your to-do list. But this is the significance of an email within your workstation, within your working environment. Now, giving you another context. Now this one is related to a user manual, and we talked about it earlier that it's related to use or repairing and so on and so forth. Different usages of a user manual. And you can see within the very first bullet is related to the explanation of steps of a procedure. So in case of providing the explanation of carrying out a procedure, that's the process, and it has to be repeated in cycles. So if you have some steps in the form of a user manual, nothing will be the issue. You explain the steps for building a piece of equipment and performing preventative maintenance or for shipping and handling procedures. So these are some of the responsibilities which are assigned to you. So if you have the basic steps, you won't have any issue to perform it again and again. So what will you do? If you just look at those pictures, this picture will also help you to understand. For example, right now you have this user manual. You are not sure how to perform those tasks. You'll basically give it a reading, and that reading will turn you into a perfect individual who knows each and every step. So just remember the points. The information is over here. You want to perform a task. You'll go through that manual and then you'll be able to perform it without any issue. So this is how user manual and the mode of technical writing becomes important in such a scenario where you have to follow the steps of a procedure, be it a research work even. So if you have provided that manual, to follow the steps, you can just go through those steps and you can do it. Scenario number 3 is related to the form of technical writing which is known as a proposal. And once again, a new kind of situation is being provided to you, that you are a trust officer in a bank and you can simply make a proposal for potential clients to do so. You must write a 20 to 30 page proposal about your bank services. So in case of a trust officer, this is basically the mode of technical writing which shall be considered ideal, having its own norms, having its own rules and regulation. But this is the one which is used in such a scenario of being a trust officer and providing 20 to 30 page of proposal regarding your bank services, making them more aware how it is all done and providing some set of recommendations as well, whether to avail those services or not. So you have to do such form of writing. Hopefully you are following me. The basic purpose is to give you different scenarios and the mode of technical writing which becomes ideal to be applied within that mode and within that context which we are dealing with. So far you have seen the one related to a user manual where you need to follow a set of procedures or a set of steps to carry out a cycle. This is the place where you think of using a manual, and that manual becomes important in such an environment. Whereas in case of following up a case, receiving a call, and you need to provide a feedback, email becomes an important component. As you can see, this is the solution, and this solution has simply become part of the World Wide Web, and from that World Wide Web, that concerned person has received the feedback he or she was seeking. So that is how these different modes become important in different environment. Then you have scenario number 4, which is related to letter writing. What is the basic environment in which letter becomes important? Now let's give it a reading. You are a customer who ordered an automotive part from a national manufacturer. Unfortunately, the part was shipped to you 5 days later than promised. Situation is being set. It arrived broken and you were charged more than the agreed upon price. A problem. You need to write a letter of complaint. So, based on this scenario which has been set, once again you can see there is a relation between the manufacturer and the client. You can say one way or another, vendors and the clients. Something has to be supplied, something has to be provided, but there are some issues, just the way the delay, then the problem of price, and these things have highlighted and turned into an issue. Now this issue has to be addressed, but keeping in view the scenario in which the whole situation has developed, the ideal mode which will or can be applied is the letter writing mode of technical writing. And that is why you have this format, that you write a letter providing it into the complaint box, and this shall be received by your vendors to resolve the issue, and that is how it will be addressed. So this is the scenario in which the letter writing becomes more important compared to the other modes of communication. So there could be variation as well, there could be changes within the application and usage of different modes of technical writing, but the purpose is to make you more aware of, or to give you the first step or the tip of the iceberg. I would say that if you know what are the basics, you would be able to go in depth, that there could be variations as well within the motive, within the objectives. There could be a looping or intermingling of different scenarios as well. So you would be in a you'll be in a position to decide which mode would stand ideal, keeping in view the scenario which is developing and the kind of technical writing which becomes more important to be used to meet the objectives of the developing circumstances. We talked about scenario number 5 when we discussed the examples of technical writing. We talked about the website. So let's suppose you're in a position learning all the languages which are basically used to design your own web page or your website. So your job is this is the task which is assigned to you. Your job is creating a corporate website. Task number 1. The website gives information to clients about your location, your pricing, your products and services, your mission statement, and job openings. The drop-down help screens provide easy-to-access answers for both customer and employee questions. So what I can do is, if we just draw it over here, the link between different components. This is the task provided to you. You are developing a website. Just look at the manner in which you are developing the website. Once it has been developed, you simply upload it, and now it is being watched and viewed by everyone on the globe who has, of course, the internet access. So this is another mode of technical writing, and these were the points that I mentioned with you earlier, that your interface should have proper icons. Then there should be a search bar as well, so that the relevant information can be searched upon. Then proper information has to be provided into different sections in a legible form, so that the reader may not find it hard to search for the relevant information. And of course it should be easy to view, because nowadays we of course have the tabs. We try to view website using our mobile phones as well. So these are the components which are the essential components of this form of technical writing when we have the website that we have to view. So these are some of the tasks that you can perform, but for that purpose you first need to be well aware of what we can achieve through this mode of technical writing, how it is structured, and what are the ultimate objectives. So scenario is simply determining the mode which is to be used in case of technical writing and the kind of technical writing which is most important. We talked about brochures, and look at the manner, some new projects, although in different languages, but just to give you an idea, their details are being provided, the relevant addresses are being provided in the initial pages, and to give you an idea, use of some pictures is also another component which is allowed and promoted within this form of technical writing. So you can see what does it do in case of this form of technical writing, used for selling and informing, using 6 to 8 panel foldouts. This is by foldouts, we usually, when you open up, so you see there the pages are folded up. So this is the allowed limit of 6 to 8 panel foldouts within which basically the relevant information is provided alongside some pictures, some relevant links, some numbers, some key terms which are to be understood. So this is what you achieve, and the kind of environment, the context in which you can use it as an entrepreneur. You are opening your own computer maintenance service, and to market your company, once again the purpose, as I discussed, to market your company you will need to write flyers, brochures, or sale letters. So you should know, based on the purpose, based on what you are doing, based on your employment status, what basically is your occupation or your profession, or based on the objectives, which can vary as well with the passage of time. So you should be well aware of what basically is the setting and what does it demand. And based on that demand, you're going to pick one of these mode of technical writing that you're going to pick to be used to achieve your purpose and your objective. I always think that this is the last one, but we always have a new example for you as well that I missed out, and this is an important one that I want you to focus as well, because this is related to your future. Once you are passed out, a graduate, then comes the time you start searching for a job. You want to become part of an organization, and that is the time when you need a proper presentation of yourself. One presentation is, of course, the oral presentation, which comes in the form of an interview. It's also a visual presentation, because the manner in which you dress up, the manner in which you sit on your chair, the manner in which you give gestures before your interviewer is going to determine your overall output, your personality, and your contribution for that organization. But your interviewer are also interested to see what you can do in written, how do you present yourself. And that short component which determines you through your writing is your resume, because that resume is a reflection of you. It tells about your biodata. It begins from how you started your early schooling, how you develop your hobbies, how you develop your interest, what are you seeking, and what have you achieved so far. So it's a reflection in a specific format, the manner you are going to organize it, the manner you're going to choose your theme, the manner you are going to arrange it into a logical order is going to determine how disciplined you are and how well organized you are when it comes to your working environment. So this is also another special mode of technical writing, and I've already explained to you the place where it is expected from you. A letter or email is not going to have that impact which a resume will have when you are interested to seek a job in a special organization. So that your mode of writing is going to determine whether you really are interested to achieve your motives and your goals or not. So don't go and seek a job by taking a brochure or memorandum or an email or letter. Letter itself has some significance when it comes to a cover letter. When it's required, it's placed before at the very first of a resume, but the resume itself is self-explanatory, which is basically expected when it comes to seeking a job or becoming part of an organization. So you have just graduated from college and it's time to get a job, and you need to write a resume and a letter of application. Just the way I told you, letter is important, but it's basically a component of that resume. It supports that resume. Resume is basically the basic component which helps you over here. What assets you will bring to their company. So it's a reflection of yourself, an opportunity for you to show what you can do for that organization's future. If they'll consider it that really he's or she is going to make a difference for us, they'll hire you. But you will have this opportunity to really show them what you are made of and what you can really do for them. This is one purpose and one more technical writing, and you will be as happy as he is when the time comes.
Let's have a brief overview of today's lecture. You need to know the purpose of your report. The first purpose of technical writing is to inform. It provides the audience with factual information in the form of reports, instructions, or descriptions. The second purpose of technical writing is to persuade. It convinces the audience to draw desired conclusions from the provided information in the form of proposals or recommendations. We shall be discussing what do the technical writers create. First, they create instructions. Second, they give directions for performing a task or for carrying out a process. Third, they design company policies and procedures. Fourth, they compose technical reports. Identifying your audience is crucial when you set out to compose a report. They could be your supervisors, colleagues, subordinates, vendors, or customers. Some of the typical examples of technical writing are: an instructional manual for repairing machinery, a memo listing meeting agendas, a letter from a vendor to a client, a recommendation report proposing a new computer system. Some of the documents that you will create in technical writing may include emails, memos, letters, reports, proposals, user manuals, websites, brochures.
So, this brings us to the conclusion. Hopefully you enjoyed our today's session, because I tried to make it more interesting with some relevant scenarios in which those modes of technical writing could be applied, could be used. First I tried to give you that setting, and then trying to link those special modes of technical writing and the manner in which you can synchronize them with that special environment which was created for you. So we started with the technical writing. We talked about the background of it. Then we moved towards the origin, significance. Then we discussed some typical examples: emails, letter, proposal, brochures, and the last one is, of course, resume, becoming even more interesting and more important for you, especially in this phase of you when you are finally completing your graduate studies. So prepare your own resume, try to add some relevant material into it, and how you can add it is something that I'm going to teach you within the upcoming lectures as well. So far, this is the end. We'll be discussing some more components as well related to technical communication. But for now, thank you very much.